proposals and the changes. And it's really interesting because this textbook in this edition, in my opinion, is really taking some more extreme stances that you definitely can quickly find where their political persuasions are. And I think that's unfortunate for them. And a little insight, the original guy, Armstrong, who was the original author of this, a group of them have put out, this is obviously the 8th edition, and the early ones he was involved. He died here a few years ago, so this edition is the first one without him. And I really believe that's one of the reasons that they feel the liberty to take some strides here to their positions. So I'm going to ask you to sort it out yourself. There's a number of places here. The notes aren't going to be a lot, but a number of places I'm going to ask you to state your opinions and feelings on some of these things. So let's get going. As I said, this is the last chapter of this part 1 on profession. What are the proposals of school reform? And it's very interesting, some of those challenges. Schools are evolving in ways that are different from what you've experienced during the years of schooling. As a teacher, education major, you must be comfortable with a professional environment that continues to alter response to changing social and political environments. And this is what I think is interesting, is that the social and political, and you know, that we're definitely seeing a change in the political scene now that's going to change, make a lot of changes and stuff. And so that's what this is about. And here's some of those focus questions, and of course these are in your textbook also. We have beaten this one to death from 2001. It'll be interesting to see if that changes. So here's that constant companion, and I've been in this business now 25 years and have seen some things come and go. And I'm not always the best one for change, but I like some stability, and I like to see kids do well. Will you be comfortable with a professional environment that continues to evolve in response to changing times? And this is one of the things that we hear a lot about, and maybe you've talked about it, is what about these older people more towards the end of their career? Are they comfortable yet with this change? And I can say to you, I've seen some that are phenomenally comfortable and have changed with it, and some are still teaching the way they did back in the 70s. So what should the purpose of education be in a democratic society? Who should control it? What should young people learn about school? Okay, let me just take you out there to the textbook so we can look at this. Here's that constant companion. Change is likely to slow modification schools. Technology is a big factor in the changes. You know, this social change that we just talked about. How do we do that? So here we look at these reflective questions. Increasing politicized issues, that people have different answers to this. And this is the whole thing behind the policy, or behind the political thing, is what should be the purpose of education? We can't agree. You and I guarantee we would disagree on what the purpose is. Here's a bigger one that really comes down to politics. Who should control? Federal government is now saying, we're giving you money, we'll dictate that curriculum. Originally, how it was designed to control education was the local people, through their local school boards. That they've been completely severed out of their hands from the standpoint of curriculum, because with the standardized test, you better be following pretty much a standardized curriculum as dictated by your state. I say, what should people be learning? You know, there was a time where it was about learning to be employed, and now it seems like our schools are exclusively about preparing people for college, even though we know in our country only half the people even attempt college, and yet it seems like that's what our schools think they're supposed to be preparing people for. And I say part of it is that people that are making laws and being teachers all had college, so they forget about that and they quickly assume that that's what we should be doing. Should teachers be held accountable for student learning? What? Let me say that again. Should teachers be held accountable for student learning? Well, I'm asking that, but I'm saying to you, you don't get to decide, because one of the big changes in education and No Child Left Behind was that really tied that shoe on tight one time, is saying it's no longer about teaching, it's about learning. So you find specific agendas will answer those questions. And to prepare yourself, this a sound understanding of issues from prompted the change and appreciation for particular interests that will serve that change, and a commitment to proposals that are consistent with your own professional values. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do a little bit later here, is what are some of your professional values? Chapter 1 suggested that schools need to be changed or reformed. Have been as many for many years. The most recent of this is this Nation at Risk in 1983, and we'll talk about that a little more. This document detailed potential threats to the nation that entailed that might follow declines in test scores, increased dropout rates. And that report concluded this: we report to the American people that while we can take justifiable pride in what, let me block this for you. Justifiable pride. Schools and colleges have historically accomplished and contributed to the United States and the well-being of its people. The educational foundations of our society are presently being eroded by a rising tide of mediocrity that threatens our very future as a nation and people. Well, they felt, let me go back here, that scores increase, perpetuate the myth that schools of the past were excellent but are poor. Data have failed to confirm many of the conclusions of the report, but public perception and policy debates will still be influenced by it. For one thing, you got to remember, in the past, not everybody was in school. That's one of the things that what they did. A lot of students did well in the past, but you got to remember, a large part at the turn of the century, a large part of the people left after 8th grade. The compulsory attendance was only through 8th grade. In my dad's time, and my dad graduated from high school in 1954, 50 some years ago, the compulsory attendance was only through 8th grade. Now, I'm proud to say my dad's a high school graduate, but at that time, many of his classmates left at the end of 8th grade and went into the world. And where did they go? This is how it's changed. But back then, they went back to the farms, and they became very productive citizens. They married a little farm girl, and they produced little farmers. And these people were able to have very productive lives and contribute to our country. Now, of course, with less than 1% of the people in our country living on farms, that's no longer a possibility. But back then, especially, it tended to be those that left. Okay. So this is, I took this straight out of your textbook. Again, it asks these questions about that. Here's your list. Here's these things. There's evidence that teaching was appropriate back then. Were learners exposed to a curriculum that valued marketability from what was tested? Were the teachers qualified to teach tested material? Does the school have a safe environment? These are all things that that can be challenged. So this here, competing ideas for the school practices, and this is the first thing I want you to do, to go to your discussion board, and you tell me that which of these, and you can take them right out of here, are of your values, because these are really competing practices. And so let's do it this way. You tell me which of these, either list A or list B, are most aligned with your values, list A or list B, and then I will allow you, except. You can go, if you say list A, you can say except, and you can pick a couple of these out. Or you can say list B, except couple. Stop now, pause this video now, and go and respond to this. I'm just going to put up under there this. This is chapter 3. We're going to go to the discussion. There. And that's your first thing on the discussion board. Okay? What about the systemic reform efforts? Outcomes of schools rather than inputs, school choice, redesign teacher compensation schemes, and implementation of federal comprehensive school reform demonstration programs. So that is, in essence, this systemic reform. And this is a big buzz, has been since, well, since Sputnik. Have you heard of that? Sputnik. It's where the Russians got somebody into space before we did. I believe it was in the 50s. And ever since then, we have been in some state of reform, blaming the school systems why the Russians got somebody up first. And so reform, when I started studying education 30 years ago, we were talking about school reform, and it has not stopped for a single day since. And now, of course, with the change of the political scene in Washington, D.C., we're going to have a lot more discussion about that. So here we are, the systemic reform, like administrative arrangements, the nature of instructional materials, the degree of support provided by learners and families, the degree to which teachers are free to select instructional approaches, well suited, the general nature of the classroom. Everything is in play. Everything is being scrutinized. All the traditional things. Please don't come into teaching and assume that you're going to teach the way you were taught in those traditional ways, because that will be challenged. So systemic reforms, these responses promote greater use of outcome goals, must know what that is, support the idea of school choice. Okay. So let's talk about these outcome goals. As I said before, one of the big changes is now not what is taught, but what is learned. And that's where this term of outcome goals comes from, because we're looking at what the outcomes are, not the inputs. For a long, long time, we evaluated you on this over here, the inputs. You know, how good a job of teaching you did. But now we're looking more for the output goals. Come back over here. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, to look at the outcomes, it's about assessment. Well, we say assessment. What's the real word for that? Yes, testing. Okay, requires learners to demonstrate sophisticated thinking skills and stands in contrast to forced choice techniques such as matching tests, and often do not assess higher order learning. And so you need like this authentic learning that we talked about, authentic assessment we had last chapter. Demonstrate to me what you know other than a test. One approach evaluating learners' performance is not attracting attention is authentic assessment. Okay? And that is where you solve problems, and it's based on this, thinking skills. And so you let this thinking skills drive your teaching and your assessment. Okay, a little tricky, a little confused? Please read this section. It's too much to explain on a lecture. What is that? Authentic assessment requires learners to demonstrate what they have learned in a way that has much in common with how a proficient adult might deal with this content. It might be in the form of an essay or documentation or some kind of a testimony. And advocates view this assessment as a more valid approach to holding teachers and schools accountable for the attainment educational approaches. So this is really kind of what we call anti-testing. And this is the first thing I say is political. It's contrary to what we're doing. Okay, this is the authors. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong. It's an observation that it's a political statement. It talks about this, but it doesn't give the other side. Who are the advocates? I don't know. So what are outcome-based assessments? Well, like we said, that demonstration of higher order learning, like solving problems in authentic tests, or we still have the high-stakes test. Take the test, mark the right box. You only got so many minutes to do it. Those types of things. That's outcome-based. And some of it comes from these areas that we've already talked about before, like that National Council of English Teachers or Social Studies teachers or math teachers or science teachers. They often have input into what those are, into what those standards are. And it's kind of interesting because I've been involved with this, the CEC, my special ed group, and it's really, it's unbelievable to see them try to agree, very hard to agree on what they should be. And so it's quite a scrap. Well, now we get into that next one, school choice. And let me take you back to your textbook. School choice comes from this, traditional thing that schools are located within, in particular, what we call an attendance zone. Attendance zone, that's what we're familiar with as, growing up, is where we attend based on our attendance zone. Okay, and then along came this school choice, where you could start to choose your own. Okay, so let's look at what that all meant. So school choice involves these voucher plans, charter schools, open enrollment, magnet schools, a number of things. And this again I took right out of your book. To be eligible for these funds at a school, let me go back again. Talks about school choice. Summary among advantages claimed for school choice are the following, and I'll let you read these on page 65. But the biggest thing is that the schools now started to compete against each other to improve for students, so they improve their quality, because of course if you don't have students, money follows the students. For example, in our state, I think it's about, it's getting close to $5,000 per student follows them. So you want students in your school, so they make them start to compete. And of course, not everybody agrees with that. As it says here, not everybody agrees that school choice is a good idea. Critics challenge that the idea that schools will lose enrollment will improve. Okay? And again, folks, you've got to read this or you're not going to understand it. It's too much to explain. This is about the voucher plans, and you're going to get to help teach about some of these things. But you must read these different points. Okay, here again, now I would like you to pause this video, or that won't work. Well, you have to watch this video on School Voucher Program from 2020, and there's going to be some discussion again on the discussion board about this, and so you'll have to have watched that. And there's charter schools. And again, you're going to get to talk about that. I've got that assigned. And it talks about both sides of it. Some oppose it, some are for it. Okay. Then open enrollment plans, open choice. Some of this will help you with your assignment. Then magnet schools. Okay, let me go back here. So here's vouchers, the video. teacher compensation, so we're up to that. So school reform, first of all, what is comprehensive school reform? And that's what we go back to here. Reform is designed to help schools improve their entire operation. Calls for changes in basic academics, professional development of teachers, levels of involvement of parents and guardians used to analyze local needs. CSRD encourages school districts to develop programs that will allow all teachers to meet challenging academic standards. Programs funds flow from the federal government to the states. State level authorities pass on funds to individual schools. In turn, the local schools allocate the money to eligible schools. States must meet certain criteria to qualify for the funds. This is what I was saying earlier. To me, this is a political thing. Disagree if you like. When we talk about these things here, let me show you very specifically what happens here, how we've given this away. Okay. To get this money, and of course, all schools want the money, but to get this money, what you do, you encourage school districts to develop this plan and meet challenging standards. Program funds then flow from the feds to the states. States then can give it to you if you follow the criteria, if you do what they ask you to do. And this is the control, how federal government gets control. You have to do these things. You have to use effective research methods in your school, effective research-based methods. You have to have a comprehensive design with aligned components. You have to have professional development. You have to measure goals and benchmarks. You have to have support within that school. You have to have parental and community involvement. You have to have external and technical support. You have to have evaluation strategies. And you have to have a coordinator of your resources. Okay, so they're saying, here are the things, if you want this money, this reform money, what you got to do. And that's what I'm whining about, folks. This is how we have given our schools to the federal government. Because all they do is hold the money, and if we want it, we're going to come to them. We're going to come and do what they ask us to do. And of course, we're also starved for money that we will gladly give up control of our school to have funding. And then here's a piece that came along after this, No Child Left Behind. Again, you're going to get to study this, but it's quite elaborate. Okay. And then No Child Left Behind, the second video, viewpoint and discussion about No Child Left Behind will come from here. The school business partnership programs. All the teacher compensation, there's 3 ones, and again, I'm going to expect you to know about this because there's things on the test about this: existing salary schedules, knowledge and skills base, merit pay. And of course, for the most part, people are still paid on this. And what is their existing salaries based on? The level of education, like what advanced degrees they have, and the years of experience. And of course, this is highly, highly criticized because there's very few other factions in our society that are paid based on those things. For the most part, some has to eventually be based on what you do or what you know. And education, of course, doesn't do that. Okay, so that's from No Child Left Behind, the video. Let me go back here. Partnerships, you get to do a little something with that. Okay, full service schools, and again, I'm going to ask you to play a role in this also on our assignment for this week, for this time. Okay, so let me take you there, and so you can see how this connects as back on our page this week, and that is this for or against, and what I'm going to ask you to do, and I've kind of modeled it here, but each of you are going to share on one. For example, now here we are on this one, and this one is on voucher plans, school vouchers. So Cassandra and I are doing this, and I just put up a little thing here, but she has to take the opposing side to this. She has to give the other side why she's for or against, and she'll put that here. And all the way through here, it doesn't matter how you feel about this, I've assigned your position, and you will defend that position. And here's all the different things I talked about: charter schools, open enrollment, magnet schools, nation at risk, merit pay, full service schools, no child left behind. All these things are here. And you get to take a position either for this or against this and paste it in here. And these are going to be on the test. You're going to want to understand these because these are all going to be on the test. Okay. And some of this is in the textbook. We'll explain some of this, but I need a link of support for it also. Because we're in a world of change here. And again, please read this chapter.